Ready to collapse time, crush limitations, and turn potential into reality? This is a journey through real lessons from those who've walked the path before you. Welcome to Layers of Leadership, hosted by Dr. Michael Marion Jr.
Welcome to Layers of Leadership. My name is Dr. Michael Marion, and I'm your host. I am here with Dr. Brian Bedford, a dear friend and a person I would call a brother and had a long history with here today, who is the president and CEO of Be Better Consulting. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marion. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. I'm super proud of the work you're doing, man.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So Brian has over 25 years of experience in leadership, not only in the private and nonprofit sector, but also in higher education. Brian is a native of Sacramento, California. After that, attended Berkeley, where you went on to do some great things. In addition to that, you also worked for Apple, Intel, and then you got over on my side of things and got into the education space and spent some time in Los Rios and Sacramento City College, CRC, Consumnes River College. And then lastly, you were at Sac State, from my understanding as well, before jumping back into the private sector with VMware,
absolutely.
Which is a global company.
Sure.
Man, Brian, you have done some phenomenal things, and I can't wait to get into it and to hear more about your leadership journey, which I think is going to not only be helpful for me, but helpful for those viewers that we're going to be watching today.
Appreciate it. It's an honor to share.
Yeah, man. So let's just start off. Tell me about growing up here in Sacramento.
Man, I grew up here in Sacramento in the 70s.
Okay.
Single parent home.
Okay.
I'm the baby of 4.
Okay.
And, we did okay. We didn't have a lot, but we didn't know we didn't have a lot, which is very common. Sure. Sometimes you don't know. House is filled with love. Holidays were amazing. And I always aspired to be an athlete. I was going to say student athlete, but really just an athlete.
Just an athlete?
Yeah, I wanted to be.
No student?
Yeah, no, not when I was a kid.
I couldn't tell from all these degrees you have over here.
That came later.
Okay.
I didn't have a lot of academic confidence when I was a kid.
Okay.
I got a lot of adulation on the playground.
Okay.
And so for me, I couldn't wait for recess and lunchtime because that's when folks were sharing with me that I was doing okay. In the classroom, I didn't get a lot of love. So so that came later.
Okay.
But I grew up, man, it was all good. I couldn't wait to get to high school. I wasn't allowed to play any contact sports. No football.
Get out of here.
No
Pop Warner, none of that.
Not till 9th grade.
It's interesting to hear you say that because my wife is very much that same thought of mine when it comes to our 2 young boys, Trey and Titus.
Yeah.
And I have mixed feelings because I played Pop Warner very young because my uncle was a coach. Was that because of your mom and she just wasn't having it?
She was afraid I might get hurt. I was a tall, skinny kid. You could count
You're still
my
tall and
ribs.
skinny.
I wish I was still skinny. I'm not anymore. But used to be able to count my ribs, and so she was afraid that I would be injured. Okay. And so our deal was I could play when I got to high school. So I was chomping at the bit because all of my friends, as kids, they were all playing.
Now, remind me, what high school did you go to?
McClatchy.
You went to McClatchy?
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Yep, CK McClatchy. Yeah.
Wow. Was that back when McClatchy was really dominant? Because I remember I had a couple people that I've talked to that McClatchy was like a really dominant sports school at some point.
Well, I'm going to take pride
Okay.
in sharing that we kind of brought it back. So my class, I would say 82, class of 82 and 83. Okay. I'm 83.
Okay.
Kind of brought it back. Prior to that, in the 60s, I think we were decent. And then we had a long drought.
Wow.
So it wasn't until we got there that we kind of brought it back. So we went 22-8 in basketball.
22-8. Okay, y'all were getting busy.
Yep, and 8-2 in football. So we just missed the football playoffs, but we won the Metro League back then. I don't know what it's called now, but back then it was it was us and Sac High and Kennedy High School.
Okay.
But Kevin Johnson was our rival.
That was your rival?
And Kevin Johnson went to Sac High, and he was all everything in basketball.
Did you get to palm one of those shots? One of those jumpers?
Kevin and I have a running joke. I like it. He doesn't like it. But he and I played one-on-one one time.
Okay.
And I beat him 7-6.
Get out of here.
Yeah, and I'm very, very proud of that.
Proud about that?
Absolutely. Now, he'll tell you a different story, but that's the truth.
I'm going to check those receipts.
That's the truth.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Systems to Solutions. Think smarter, work better. Welcome to Systems to Solutions.
So back then, was basketball and football kind of your thing?
Yeah, basketball and football. I have two older brothers,
Okay.
and one of my brothers, John, that's what he played. And so my first goal setting was just to be better than he was.
Makes
So
sense.
he played basketball and football, so I wanted to play basketball and football, and I just wanted to be better than he was.
Gotcha.
And so that was my driving force back then.
Wow.
Yeah, but those are the only two sports I played. After Little League Baseball, I couldn't hit the curveball, man.
Couldn't hit the curveball?
No, that curveball gave me all kinds of trouble, so I had to let it go after 12.
You know, similar to you, I grew up in a single parent household. My mother was and is the light of my life, right? And so understanding that, how was that for you, especially with four brothers, growing up in a single parent home? How was that?
Well, two brothers and one sister, but
sorry.
but yeah, it's okay. But I didn't really, I didn't talk to my father till I was 12.
Till you were 12.
12 years old. Yeah. So I have this relationship around, men and fathers in the household, et cetera, and so forth. But I saw my mother just do amazing things, but it was common to me because I didn't have any other orientation.
Yep.
So I saw her be the mother and the father, the breadwinner, a disciplinarian, all of that, right? And I just thought she was amazing, but I thought everybody's mother was like that, and I thought everybody's mother was amazing.
Yeah.
Until I started seeing some friends that had two parents in the home.
Yeah.
And it always struck me that, so if you want to do something, you have to get two permissions. I only have to get one.
True.
So I saw efficiencies at an early age that I only have to convince one person I should be able to go to the
You're
all-night
gonna take
skate.
advantage of that?
Yeah.
Wow, that's deep, Brian. I think about my experience very much parallels to you. My father was in and out of prison, unfortunately. However, my mom is absolutely the rock and made sure that we were always clothed and food was on the tables. And of course, we had some rough days and rough nights, but she did everything that she could to make sure that we were successful.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that was very much the same for you. So let's speed ahead. So graduate, and you said sports was your thing, not
my thing.
academics.
Yep.
And you received a full ride scholarship to go to Cal Berkeley.
Yeah, so there were some turning points in high school. I had an English teacher named Dorothy Schluter, my 10th grade English class.
Okay.
So at home, we always spoke standard English, unless we were playing.
Okay.
Now, if we were joking around, then we were allowed to kind of say what you wanted to say, right? No swear words, but you could, essentially say what you wanted to say. But when we were talking, my mother always spoke very standard English.
Love it.
So I grew up kind of trying to be a knucklehead, but I wanted to do the sports things. I had many older friends, meaning that they were 2 or 3 years older, and they weren't necessarily doing all the right things.
Sure.
So I was only going to class so I could play sports because you had to have 2.0.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I wasn't doing homework, wasn't doing any of that.
Okay.
But if I got called on in class in English, I could tell you what sounded right, but I couldn't tell you why. And so Dorothy Schluter would always ask two questions. Is this sentence correct? And then you were supposed to know grammatically why it was correct or incorrect.
Okay.
I could never answer that second question.
Really?
So one day after class, she just told me, she was a white lady about, 5'2" or 3.
Okay.
And at this time, I'm about 5'10", 5'11". I'm just growing, right? So I'm looking down at her. And she stopped me and she said that you're gonna get your act together. You're gonna start doing the work. I'm going to nominate you for Gate English next year.
Okay.
And John Darling is going to be and she just laid it out. And I'll never forget that because I couldn't understand why she was investing in me. And there was something in me then that she saw. And then I had a high school basketball coach, Harvey Tahara, who asked me to play varsity as a sophomore. And he'd only done that one other time. And I believe it might have been with Blanchett or somebody it was some great player that went there.
Did you say Blanchett?
Dr. Rhonda Blanchett. Dr.
Blanchett.
Absolutely. It may not have been him, but it may have been him. But anyway, I was number 2. Wow. So he asked me to play, and he said that the one thing that I had to do was be at his desk every day doing my homework.
Wow.
Which scared me because I had never really done homework.
What do you think it was about you now, years later, when you look back on that and say, what was it about me that made them single me out? What do you think that was?
I don't know, Mike. I mean, I think, I pretty much got along with everybody.
Okay.
And on the teams that I was playing on, I was commonly the captain.
Okay.
I was the one that people came to when they had issues and challenges and so forth. And I don't know if they saw some of that or not. But he asked me to be there every day, and he was checking. And back then, you didn't have these big, giant desks. These desks were small.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll never forget the very first time I had to do my homework there, I didn't even know what the homework assignment was. So I was sitting at the desk with him across me like 2 feet,
Okay.
pretending to do homework. I didn't even know what to say. Well, pretending.
Okay.
And it took me about, 3 or 4 weeks of that.
Wow.
Where I said, well, I'm here, I may as well try.
Sure.
And so as a sophomore in high school, that's when I became a student athlete. That's when I would say I started trying to actually study.
Wow. When I think about that, Brian, I think about like those are key moments in your life that absolutely from the outside looking in were things that changed your direct trajectory in life.
100%.
Right? And I even remember those times and those experiences that I had in my journey. But with you, what were some of those things that you carried along with you when you transitioned and ended up going to Berkeley?
Yeah. So
And how did you end up getting there?
So in terms of work ethic,
Okay.
it was going to take some work.
Sure.
Because remember, I had to learn how to study. I had to learn how to be a student. So that's off top. And then the other thing, and I didn't know this then, but I'll say it now, is that there are a lot of good people in the world.
Yes.
And we try to divide and highlight our differences a lot. But if you notice, neither one of those folks were black. So don't get me wrong, I had a lot of black people pour into me as well. But these two people in particularly were not. And so Dorothy Schluter, going back to English, I remember walking in the hallway after that conversation thinking, why do you care about me? You're not supposed to care about me, right? Because that's what society had taught me at an early age. You're not supposed to care.
Right.
Right? So I carried that forward going to Berkeley. And I kind of landed at Cal because I really wanted to be a quarterback.
Wanted to be a quarterback.
I wanted to be a quarterback. I was a quarterback in high school, and I wanted to play a quarterback in college.
Okay.
And I had some opportunity to go on and play, but not all of them are going to be at quarterback.
Okay.
And Joe Kapp was the coach at the time at Cal. He was a Mexican quarterback at Cal in the late 50s.
Wow.
And so he understood what it was to be a quarterback that was not white at Cal. And I was I believe I was top on the board. I won't say I was number one on the board, but I was top on the board. And he came to my house and did the whole home visit back. I don't know if they still do that now, but they come to the home, do the home visit, the whole deal. And he actually sold my mom on Cal because he was very handsome and charismatic. My mother was like, you should go to Cal. I hadn't even heard of Cal, really. I had heard of USC, UCLA, Michigan.
You said USC, right?
Yeah, but that's all they were on TV a lot. That's all they were on TV a lot. But I had never really heard of Cal.
Okay.
And then, but after I learned more about it, and and I knew how close it was to here.
Sure.
I'm a mama's boy at heart, and so I was like an hour and 20 minutes away. That's ideal. And then the academics piece came at the end. I was like, oh, and it's a great academic institution too.
Right.
Okay, that's a win-win-win across the board. So that's how I ended up at Cal.
So not only did you attend Cal, you were the first black quarterback at Cal, which I definitely want to hear about your experience.
Sure.
But you also had a phenomenal professor there at the time, Dr. Harry Edwards.
Absolutely.
Who I'm sure had to be and have a major impact on you.
Yes, I want to clarify something. So I'm the first black quarterback in the modern era. There was another brother named Clarence Williams, I believe was his name.
Okay.
He played during the single wing days, but he wasn't under center. So a lot of times they would hike it to the halfback or the fullback, but not the quarterback. So in the modern era, I'm that guy. And Doc, I can't tell you how.
For those that
Fortunate,
don't know
yeah.
about Doc, maybe give them a little quick snippet of
Yeah.
his impact.
So Dr. Edwards, he was heavily involved in civil rights. So in 1968, when Tommy Smith and Juan Carlos put their fist up in Mexico Olympics,
Mexico City,
he organized much of that. And he did a ton of work with Black Panthers, et cetera, and so forth, just very, very involved. And then he became a professor of sociology at Cal. And that's where we met. He and I met. And I was told to stay away from him because he's militant.
You were told to stay away from
I was
him.
told to stay away from him. Don't go to Doc's classes. Just stay away. And I didn't even know. I didn't know who Dr. Edwards was.
Okay.
Or is. So so I remember the very first time I saw him.
Okay.
I was sitting on the wall with some cats at school, and I see this 6'8" tall brother walking.
Did he have the glasses on?
Dressed in all black. Yep, he has brown glasses on, salt and pepper hair, bald headed, with about, I don't know, 30 or 40 students behind him.
Oh, yeah.
It was like the Pied Piper look. You know, he's walking and they're just following him.
Real deal.
Yeah. And I remember looking and saying, who is that? And they're like, you don't know that? Oh, that's Doc. And I was like, Doc who? And they said, Doc Edwards. And I was like, oh, that's the, in my head, I'm like, that's the one they told me to stay away from. So I watched him walk, and I watched all these students just follow him. So now I cut my class. About 2 weeks after that, I cut my class and went to his class.
Wow.
And I just sat in the back. And his lecture style just mesmerizing for me. He would just pace the stage. His big, tall brother, 6'8", about 260. He would just pace the stage back and forth, reciting, just lecture, just talking. He wasn't even looking at the audience. He's just looking down, just talking, right? And so he would cite all these people, right? And I would say, nobody can cite another author like that with being accurate, you know? And so went to that class, was amazed. I went to another class. This time I brought a notebook, right?
You bought a notebook?
A notebook. He started citing folks. I started writing it down.
Wow.
And then I went to the library to see if he was accurate. Spot on. So from that point on, I said, I got to take his class. And so I took Soc 3, and then I asked him to become a mentor, and he became a mentor. So he poured into me for about 4 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
To be able to have somebody like that
it's phenomenal.
as a mentor,
Yeah.
and understanding your plight as a student athlete, right?
Yep.
He gets it. He understood it. He was in it.
I have to tell you, the first time that he and I met, I was supposed to go to office hours, but I chickened out twice.
Okay.
I just was too intimidated by this guy. But one day, it's probably around, I don't know, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I just decided I'm gonna go by there and see if he's there. It was not office hours, so I'm gonna go just check. So I go in there, man, knock on the door, and I'm calling out Dr. Edwards, because the door was kind of open, but he had 2 officers, like, you know, one in the front and then another one behind them. So that door was open, but it was empty. The office was empty. So I see this other door in the back, so I go to the second door, I tap on that, and I push it open, and he's sitting there with his head down. And I promise, without looking up, he says, "What took you so long? Have a seat." And never looked up. He was
I got
writing.
chills
Oh,
when
man,
you said
every
that.
time I tell the story, I get chills. He said, "Have a seat." He said, "What took you so long?" So I was trying to figure out, you know, I told myself, right?
I'm just gonna sit down.
Yeah. And then he knew my whole bio. He knew what high school I went to. He knew what sports I played.
Wow.
He told me everything that was going to happen that hadn't happened yet at Cal.
Wow.
He said, "You will be a starter. You will do this, but you're going to change. If you want to go to the NFL, you're going to probably go as a DB or wide receiver." And he laid it out. And we sat there for 3 hours. He signed his book, and I left. And he did most of this. I enjoyed talking. He did all the talking.
Oh, of course. In that setting?
If you look at time lapse, I probably talked about 10 minutes. He talked 2 hours and
But think
50
about that,
minutes,
Brian. Think about not only that opportunity, but he laid your future out.
He laid it out
in front of you.
Laid it out, and it was powerful.
And let's speed ahead.
Yeah.
You graduate with your degree from Berkeley, and you're blessed to be able to go to the NFL, get drafted by Dallas,
the Cowboys,
and end up going to the Chargers. Tell me about that.
So that was a childhood dream, like I said before, to play sports, And I remember the first time I had that Dallas Cowboys helmet on.
Okay.
Had the star on the side. It's surreal, man. And just thinking, I can't believe I'm really here. Michael Irvin was also drafted that year, same year, 88. Wow. And it was just...
Be careful what you say next.
It was just amazing. It was amazing. And so then I got traded. I'd never been cut from anything.
Oh.
I'd never been traded. I'd always been kind of the guy that's going to be in the mix somewhere, right? So to be traded was a hard hit. Okay. Then I got an opportunity to go to San Diego, and that was great. Gotcha. And so being able to play a game that you would probably play anyway, but to be paid for it is, incredible. I don't know that it gets that much better than that.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Not only did you come out of Sacramento, single-parent home, graduate from high school, get picked up by one of the most prestigious colleges in the country, Cal, but then also being able to pursue your dream of playing in the NFL. This podcast is about leadership and layers of leadership, and I just hear multiple layers within that, right? So what were some of the tools would you say that you learned coming from high school to college now to be able to walk into the NFL?
Yeah. So it's never going to be given to you.
Oof.
You just got to know that. It's not going to be given to you. Resiliency. One of the pieces that I didn't share was when I was at Cal, I had folks, telling me that I shouldn't be playing quarterback, not because I wasn't athletic enough, not because I didn't prepare, I wasn't strong enough, simply because I was black.
Say that again.
I said, I have folks telling me I should not play QB simply because I was black.
Because you were black.
Yeah. I got letters from doctors, lawyers, Cal alumni that were saying to me, writing to me, which Coach Cap held back from me until I was ready. Wow. I'm so thankful for the people that have been in my life that have helped me, because Coach Cap, again, he and I didn't say this either, but he and I met every day. We had turkey sandwiches every day. Off season, during the season, didn't matter. There's only so much game film you can talk about, right? So we would start talking about life. And he would start talking about what it is to be Mexican in America, et cetera, and so forth, and all the things that he had been through. He just poured out his life to me over the course of these years, right? He gave me, I think it was, let me think now, probably 4 or 5 letters.
Okay.
But they were all about a year to 18 months old that he opened and already read, addressed to me, but he opened them and read them, right?
Wow.
And he said, I didn't give you these till I think till I thought that you'd be ready to handle them.
So what was that like, receiving that at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, receiving those letters from especially people like that were Cal alums, people that were in the fans, rooting for Cal? Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I had no toolbox, man. We were raised in a household that there were 2 kinds of people, good and bad. Okay. And my mother used to always say, get around good ones, stay away from the bad ones. Yeah. So, I have my little turbulent time in high school where I was around the wrong ones, but I eventually figured it out. And so, but I still didn't have a toolbox to deal with this thing because it was never really about race. Then I wasn't raised in a household like that, right? And so not having a toolbox, man, to say why does the world still, why is this an issue? I thought it was about winning games.
Right.
And so Coach Cap was trying to share with me the world can be very cruel. It's what it is. And he had a very similar experience in the 50s.
Which has to be incredible for you now when you think about it, because you do DEI work, right? That is kind of the foundation of the work that you do. But hearing these stories, I'm sure just adds to,
It shaped my paradigm.
Right.
So I said before, Coach T, Dorothy Sluter, they're not black folks, but they were good. There are good people, right? And they care about other people. I was a kid. They cared about the kid, right? Coach Cap, he had some experiences. He shared with me. I had my own lived experience. I also got booed one time at home, and here's another teaching point that goes into how I lead and kind of how I see the world. So I remember also, after I won the job at Cal, I remember reading an article. I believe it was in the Chronicle.
Okay.
They had an article on San Francisco 49ers at the top, and it was talking about Joe Montana, et cetera, and so forth. Then at the bottom, there was a story on Cal, on us.
Okay.
And it said Brian Bedford, comma, Cal's black quarterback, comma, and then it said what it had to say, right? And I remember then thinking to myself, that's really strange to me. Like, it doesn't say Joe Montana, comma, the white quarterback. Why does and I started to understand that race matters.
Absolutely.
Dr. West said that in 1992, but it does. Race matters, right? And I started to understand that. And so then I also remember, so this is another big piece for me, is I remember we're playing Washington at home, and I'm playing poorly, really bad.
Okay.
And I remember during the game, the crowd started booing. And I wasn't sure if they were booing the offense or if they were booing me.
Okay.
But there was a part in the game where the team was on the field and Coach Cap was giving me the play. And when he gave me the play, I ran on the field. And prior to me running on the field, they weren't booing. But as soon as I started running on, they started booing. And that huddle was probably about 3 miles away. It seemed like it was 3 miles away from the sideline. It's a long run.
So that's a lot of boos.
And I'm getting booed by 50,000 folks at home with my family, my friends from Sacramento, my girlfriend at the time. I mean, all of that, right? So those are growing moments, right? You as a leader or whoever you think you are, it's either going to crush you or you're going to develop. And I chose the latter. But I remember these moments that I'm sharing with you. I remember them like they were yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's I think about it similar to you, student athlete, and just those experiences, like you said, they shape you.
Oh, they sound.
And so as we move ahead a little bit, so graduate from Cal, go to the NFL, do great, put up some numbers. Know you spent some time in Canada. But I'm interested in getting into some of this private sector that you were in.
Yeah.
So you worked for Intel, you worked from Apple. Yeah. How was that transition for you as now an athlete, right, to the professional space? How was that for you?
So when I was playing in BC, I hurt my knee.
Okay.
And I came home. I came home to do my rehab.
Okay.
And then I had a setback on my knee, so I had to stay here a little longer.
Okay.
And I had another contract to go back, but I decided to go to law school. So in the course of going to law school, I met this cat named Mike, and he was working at Apple.
Okay.
And Apple had a program that if you worked there, they basically paid for you to go to school.
Oh.
So I got the tuition reimbursement deal,
Excellent.
right? So that worked out well. So that's how I ended up at Apple. It wasn't because I'm a techie or I know anything about tech, but I was doing contract negotiation, and I enjoyed that. So I was doing contract negotiation. So that's how I got to Apple. I did that for about 5 years, and then I went to Intel and did the same kind of work at Intel, in addition to HR, legal, and other work there.
And at that time, you had already received your JD, correct?
Yes.
And so how was it for you, black man, JD, going into the tech space? What was that experience like? 'Cause I often hear mixed messages around the space being welcoming and then sometimes not being welcoming. What was that experience for you going into those spaces?
I think as an entry-level person, you see more people of color.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
As you start to ascend, it becomes more homogeneously white.
Okay.
And so in those circles, but you're sitting at that conference table, it's a different vibe, it's a different feel. Sometimes it's that imposter syndrome in your head where you start creating narratives and sentiments that may not be real, but they're part of your experience because you understand. And, I always talk about how no matter where you go in America, many black folks have been told you have to be twice as good as someone, right? And it doesn't matter if it's north, south, east, west. It's just a common narrative. I don't know if it's real, but that's what we're
I was
we're
told that growing
right.
up. Absolutely.
And so you're sitting at the table, and so those things start to conjure up in your mind, and you start creating some narratives around that and what people might be thinking, et cetera, and so forth. So there are, but then those things from sport come back into play.
There we go.
Right? Getting booed by 50,000,
Yes.
being told that you can't, et cetera, and so forth. And so those things help me power through some of it. And some of that stuff is I can't tell you if it's 100% real or not real, but I would tell you more often than not, it was about being qualified to be there and being able to carry your weight. And once you demonstrate that, those things kind of move to the background a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you think about that, what would you tell somebody that has an interest in going into tech, that may be experiencing some of those things that you maybe have perceived that was, hey, am I supposed to be here? Am I not supposed to be here? What advice would you give them to kind of help them kind of move along through that journey?
Yeah. Remember your name.
Okay.
And name is really a metaphor for just remember who you are, your purpose, your skills, your experiences, your qualifications that got you here.
Yes.
Because sometimes you forget that. And you can forget it. It just starts to swirl. Like you start swirling all the time, and you're always on edge about, I'm the only one in the room that looks like me. So maybe I'm the only one that's had this kind of lived experiences that I've had. So you feel like you're always chomping at the bit to kind of either prove something or et cetera and so forth. Right. And that can get you way out of pocket.
Yeah.
But when you sit still for a minute and just remember, I'm here on purpose.
There it is.
Yeah, I'm here on purpose. So remember your name.
There we go.
Yeah.
So shortly after that, I think is around the time we met.
Yeah.
When you got in, you jumped into my field.
Yeah.
You jumped into the education space.
Yeah.
Tell me, how did that come about?
Yeah, so I was having a good time at Intel, you know.
Making big money.
Yeah, money was cool.
Making big money.
Everything was good, man. Then I don't know, I had one of those epiphanies around, man, is this going to be my legacy, that you know,
Yes.
did whatever it is you did prior to getting here, and then you got some stock and stuff, and then you just rolled it out.
I'll take some of that stock if you don't want it.
But I got into this space of, you know, I really want to try to make a difference.
Yeah.
I was already volunteering, just like that, but I really want to make a difference. And higher education seemed like a spot, you know, where you could teach. And then I could share some of these things that I've been through with other folks. And so maybe they can figure out what to do differently or what to do better or whatever, right? And so I just kind of applied for a position, and I don't know how I got it. I didn't have any teaching experience, so I don't know. I just got lucky again. Somebody saw, actually the dean, her name is Shirley Short.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She would tell me after, she said, I saw something in you in the interview process. And again, I don't know what this something that people will talk about,
sees it.
but she said, I'm gonna hire you.
There we go.
And that's how I started in higher ed. And then I did that for 5 years teaching business law. Mm-hmm. And then I came over to CRC and met you.
Good old Los Rios.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, Brian, to hear you talk about that journey, because as you were talking about Dr. Harry Edwards, I vividly remember a time when you were coming out of your department within Los Rios, and it was a group of students walking with you. Mm. Like, I vividly remember that.
That gives me chills.
So, like, that's the full circle,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
Which I think
yeah,
is incredible.
Yeah.
So you did your stint in education where you did some phenomenal work. You went over to Sac State, and you did some great, you were dean over there, did some cool stuff over there. Then eventually you said, hey, I'm going to jump back in kind of this private sector space where you were at VMware.
Yep.
And then you went to jump on to get your own thing and do Be Better.
Right.
So tell me about Be Better. Tell me where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So somewhere around 2017 or 18, I knew, you know, I've been doing this equity and inclusion work. Mm-hmm. Even if it wasn't my job, it was always my work.
Sure.
So I might have a job description that says you're supposed to be over here doing this, but I'd always find out where are the affinity groups, who can I help, where can I support, et cetera, and so forth. But around 2017, 18, I said, I'm going to go back to school.
That's right.
And I want to get a doctorate in the space, because
Dr. Bedford.
I really felt like I had this lived experience that, you know, we've talked about today. Then I had this work experience as well, where I've been in these different sectors. I've been in the nonprofit sector. I've been in higher ed. I've been in for-profit, right? Yeah. So I've had this work experience, I wanted to get the scholarship. And I felt like the scholarship would share with me, and I'd be able to share with others, kind of what does the universe say about this equity and inclusion, and about the human experience, et cetera, and so forth, in particular on race and gender, right? So I went back to school again, and I got a doctorate there, knowing that I wanted to get back on the big global stage. That's how VMware came into play. Okay. Because I was at Sac State, but I knew I wanted to do global. I wanted to do global work again. And so, so after my program was over, I started applying for jobs, and VMware seemed like a good place. They really, really cared about DEI. They were investing in it, not just time, but money and other resources. And they had been doing it for a long time. And so I felt like I could go there. One, I could learn a little bit on the global stage, how that plays out. But then also I felt like I had something to bring to them as well.
Oh, no question.
And so I was able to do that. And then VMware was bought by Broadcom, and Broadcom is not as interested in DEI as VMware. So
I'm sure you got another nice package.
so that was that. And then I had already kind of been doing my own thing.
Okay.
Lightweight. I would do stuff on weekends. I would do stuff, at night. Sometimes somebody asked me to come speak on something. And I didn't really start out saying I want to do my own thing and have my own. I didn't really start that way, but it kind of evolved into that. And people started offering, money to come and talk. And so it became a thing. Yeah.
Which you're incredible at.
Thank you.
We've had multiple conversations.
Yeah.
So, Brian, as we get ready to close out this episode of Layers of Leadership, please, parting words you may have, recommendations on books, and I do, and you know this, you have a favorite quote that you have to say for our viewers that I absolutely love. So, please.
So, parting shots on leadership.
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really big into authentic leadership. I don't think there's one leadership style. I think all of us have leaders in us.
Yes.
Some of them it's just more pronounced, and others of us it's been more suppressed. But I'm big in authentic leadership, and part of that says I have to understand who I am in spaces and situations, and understand what my value structure is, what's important to me, et cetera, and so forth. So when you can emerge in that space, in that way, as an authentic leader, that's when I think we bring the most to any situation. So that's that piece. What was the other one? Yeah?
Recommendations on books or podcasts?
Yeah. I'm reading right now. I'm getting through Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Message.
Good one.
Yeah, I'm pushing through that right now. It's a great, he's one of my favorite authors. He's become one of my, I've read all the books except for the very first one.
You got to read the first one.
I read Between the World and Me, The Water, 8 Years.
Got to read the first one.
And I haven't read the first one yet. So, but anyway, so I'm reading that right now. It's a great book. I'm also reading I have two books I got going at the same time. Okay. One of them is The New Jim Crow.
Yeah.
So I'm reading that
Powerful
too.
Book.
Yeah, reading that one as well. Those are good books. I don't read. I commonly read articles. I read a lot of different journals. The Atlantic. Okay. CNN stuff all the time. HBR stuff. Okay. But yeah, I try to synthesize or compare and contrast different voices with what I think I believe.
I like that.
Yeah, and when I get new info, I pride myself on trying to have a growth mindset. Yeah. So if I see something or hear something or read something new that doesn't fit, then I interrogate it and figure out how I can incorporate some of that thinking into what I'm doing. What else was
So you got to leave me with my favorite quote that you say, but also at the end, please let the folks know how they can find you.
Absolutely. So the quote. Any great work requires commitment and sacrifice. And what I talk about is in any great work, you can plug in anything you would like. Podcast host, a father, a husband, a wife, a teacher, whatever it is, whatever you consider to be great work. Commitment. Doing what you said you were going to do long after the mood in which you set it in has passed.
I love it.
Yeah,
you
that
gotta
is
say it
not
one more
mine.
time. You gotta say it one more time. I love it.
Doing what you said you were going to do long after the mood in which you set it in has passed.
There it is.
And the sacrifice piece is you got to give up something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's opportunity cost. You're here, I'm here. That means we can't be somewhere else,
Yeah.
right? So if you want to do something different, you got to do something different,
There
right?
we go.
And so then the piece that I add to that is there may be somebody listening today that says, well, you know, I've done some great work and I didn't commit and I didn't sacrifice anything. And I respond to that commonly with, I'm not going to debate with you. I'll just suggest that you may have been doing work. It just may not have been great work.
There it is.
Right? And so the rhetorical ask is this: what commitments and sacrifices are you willing to make in order to do great work?
Yeah.
And only you can answer that.
100%.
Only you can answer that. So
Love it. Love it. Love it. Now
Thank
tell
you.
our viewers how we can find you.
yeah, so I'm BeBetterConsulting.com is the website. And then you can also get me at BrianBedford88@yahoo.com.
There it is. Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate being here, man. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap.